Hi everybody, welcome back to the Bible study. Today we are in Psalm 10, which I think is a very relatable psalm. The expression, the sentiments that are expressed here are very relatable even in the modern day. So let's talk about Psalm 10. As far as the author, we don't know the exact author. Many people ascribe it to David because it's right in the middle of some of David's psalms and sounds somewhat similar, but author is unknown. We're not told. New Testament references, there is somewhat of a vague reference to Psalm 10 in Romans chapter 3, verse 14 in Paul's writing. So for our themes today, I framed it up in a series of 2 questions followed by an answer, and our outline will also follow this kind of pattern. So the first question is this: why are wicked men allowed to live evil lives and still succeed, still many times seem to flourish on the earth? Question number 2, is God blind to the evil that's going on in the world? Is he not paying attention to it? And then the answer of the psalmist is given. God is not blind, and he will certainly judge evil men, even if he doesn't judge them maybe as quickly as we might want him to or expect him to. No definitions today, so we can move over to page number 2, to our outline section. We've got 18 verses total, 2 sections. The first section I've entitled with a question. Do the wicked flourish because God is absent? That's what the psalmist is asking. So the psalmist begins by asking God why he's hiding, which is interesting. The psalmist doesn't understand why God hasn't responded to all the evil people on the earth, all the evil that's being perpetrated on the earth, and why wicked men sometimes succeed and even flourish, even despite the fact that they are living wicked lives and living in rebellion to God. He asks God why he's standing far away, as if God is so distant from the earth that he doesn't know what's going on. He's unaware of all the evil that's going on, all the oppression that's going on. He lists the actions, some of the actions of these wicked men. He says they pursue the poor, they boast in pride, they're greedy, they mock the idea that God exists at all, they're full of mischief, they ambush the helpless, and they murder the innocent. Right? And all these things still go on in our world today. The evil man thinks and behaves like God doesn't even exist. He doesn't believe that God is going to call him into account for his actions. He says of his evil deeds, quote, God has forgotten. He has hidden his face. He will never see it. That's verse 11. So evil men do evil things, and yet they flourish in life, or at least it seems that they flourish in life. This is the psalmist's question. Why? Why is this allowed to go on? Why hasn't God done anything about this? That takes us to section number 2, verses 14 through 18, confidence that God is not absent. So after posing these questions, after expressing these frustrations that I think you can probably relate to, the psalmist then goes on to make an expression of his faith. He goes on to express his confidence that no, God is not actually absent, even though he doesn't understand exactly all that's going on. That while it may appear that evil men are getting away with their wickedness, God is actually present, taking note of all of their mischief, and judgment will be handed out. God has his reasons for delaying judgment on these men, but God is certainly anything but blind or removed from the earth to the point that he is unaware of the wickedness. You'll see that the psalmist acknowledges that, quote, the Lord is king forever and ever. It's not that he is no longer reigning or something like that. He is king. He states his confidence that God will help those who have been afflicted by these wicked men, that he'll give justice to the fatherless, and that ultimately he's going to bring the weight of judgment down on these evil people who mock his existence while they fill his earth with wickedness. So that takes us down into our application section, and as I said, I think this is a very relatable psalm, and we want to talk about that a little bit. This psalm contains the frustrations of a man who isn't capable of understanding the master work of God. And it also is a psalm that contains a display of how faith appropriately responds to that frustration. This frustration is a very natural one, especially when we look around and we see people who are trying to live godly lives, trying to follow God's laws, and they're struggling. And then we look at people who could care less about God and his instructions and care less about honoring him, and yet they seem, in at least earthly standards, to be succeeding. So it's natural to ask, why? Why, Lord, is it like this? It's natural to be angry at injustice, to wonder why evil people flourish, and to wonder why God isn't passing out judgment more swiftly, as we would if we were in charge. This psalm lets us know that we aren't the only ones who have struggled with these frustrations, and I think importantly, it also lets us know that it's not wrong to express this frustration to God. That's exactly what the psalmist is doing. Now, I think if you study the Bible gives us a lot of answers explaining why the world is the way that it is. But the psalmist doesn't go into all of those details. He concludes the psalm just with a simple expression of faith in God. The psalmist knows that God is on the throne. He knows that God is in control. He knows that God exists. And so he confidently entrusts the execution of judgment to God and to his timing. And this is an appropriate conclusion for us to draw in application. We know that God exists. We know that he isn't blind, that he isn't absent, that he isn't distant. So we can trust, as Solomon writes at the end of Ecclesiastes, that God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether it is good or evil. But he'll do it in his time.